All right, look. For real though, I don't know how to really start this off, so this is just going to be like a, stream of consciousness.
What about using all your past radio experience that you mentioned?
I've just tried to do that and it didn't work. So, okay, I'm just going to get stuck into this in the way that I sort of see people get stuck into this on YouTube when they're just vlogging and whatever. Yeah, so basically, today we got a little live and direct thing going on here. We got a few conversation points planned out along the lines of the internet, and I guess the bottom line is, what is the internet? How does the internet take a symbolic, manifestation in our consciousness, and how does that, come into play in our lives, and how do we look at the internet and all that kind of stuff? And we're going to be looking into that. We're going to be seeing, just the boys' reactions and their own opinions and thoughts on this topic. Everyone's going to be coming from a slightly different angle, possibly. Might agree on some things, might disagree on things. The whole point of this is for conversation, and hope you enjoy.
Today I'm joined
by Giorgio Lambos, good friend Giorgio Lambos, teacher, Mr. Teacher and musician. Nathan Richardson.
What up?
Nathan Richardson, IT man and general spiritual man.
Absolutely.
Quentin Ramo Smith, audio engineer.
Hello.
Studio man, and everything else. He's done a lot of podcasts before. So, let's get stuck into it. So, how the internet is a reflection of our subconscious ideas and desires. I guess that's the first thing here. Yeah, I see Gio's written a few things down first.
Actually, I have something I liked. What's each one of your first memories of the internet and the digital world?
Ooh, that's a very good question.
Flash games on Newgrounds.
Ooh,
Mario versus Sonic videos.
Ooh.
And other sort of like gaming fan games.
And how old was that for you?
I was 8 at my mate Chiggy's place. I didn't have internet.
Shout out to Chiggy.
Shout out to Chiggy. He's a good guy. The best guy.
God rest his soul.
God rest him.
Oh, wait, he's still alive.
Is
Sorry.
he a cop?
No, he's a Hilux driver, tradie, elevator, fixer,
right.
man.
Okay, anyway. Yeah.
Playing Mario versus Sonic Flash games, watching like movies of like Mario and Sonic fighting each other. I watched a whole bunch of those. I was fascinated by the context, by the concept, like any Nintendo kid would have been in a pre-Super Smash Brothers Brawl world. And I didn't have the internet at the time, and I was like shocked that was a thing. I think also around the same time it was RuneScape, because Chiggy was a big RuneScape man. And like, I was tripped out by the fact you could play this game, and there was like all these people across the world playing the same game.
Yeah, that
flipped me out,
man. That's an interesting
Especially as an 8-year-old, the idea of globalized media.
Yeah,
mind-blowing stuff, honestly.
It's honestly mind-blowing. I remember my first one was, it was RuneScape, but alongside RuneScape, and I had the exact same thoughts that you did. I'm like, I went to my mate's place, Jonathan, and he's like, hey man, you should suss out this game. And like the RPG element obviously got me into it, but like when you see other people online and you get told that they're real people, you're like, what? That flips you out. But it was that concurrently with, I was a young boy, Greek kid, my parents are like, hey, you should watch this movie called 300. I'm like, yeah, sweet, I'll watch it. I felt like a patriot, man. I was like, 7 years old. I was like, yeah, and my mum and dad are like, yeah, that's our ancestors. I'm like, yeah.
That's the film they chose.
That's it. Well, I don't think they chose. I don't think they went through like a conscious process of like, okay, we have to propagandize our kid.
Because that's the actual US propaganda of 9/11 and the Iraq War.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was just a matter of my dad was on the couch and he's like, oh, there's this movie on. It's called 300. I'm not bothered changing it. So I'm just going to convince you it's good for you to watch it. And I'm like, okay, sick. And then I watched it, fell in love with 300. And then I'm like, Dad, just bought a Windows Vista computer. Ooh. Jumped on YouTube and looked up 300. Then I found the 300 GIF hole. The GIFs.
Oh, you mean This Is Sparta?
This Is Sparta.
I'm firing my laser. All that kind of stuff.
Mashups. And then that, and I was 8, like 7, 8. And then that led me down a hole of finding online forums. Mm-hmm. And then that was like my major, like YouTube.
And then you had that whole comments. Like eco-terrorist arc.
Yeah. Then I was 8.
We're going to talk about that on
look, with the eco-terrorism when I was 8 years old, look, just don't ask. If you're gonna buy fertilizer,
just like the US military.
If you're gonna buy fertilizer, right, make sure you go to different states. Look, I want to make a public service announcement. I'm not saying that eco-terrorism is a viable solution to the people in charge of not doing anything about the environment. I'm just saying. Look, anyway, Nathan, what about you, man? What was your first internet encounter?
Well, the technosphere definitely was video games, right? From Sega, PS1, and then to PC.
Yeah.
And that's where the internet kind of came into it. And it was definitely video games that I think had the initial fucking pull, and that's the thing that drew me in.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing it gave me and the most like impact it had on me was like this was like a wide ocean. It was like I was a pirate. It was like there were no hard borders, lines, rules. I could kind of go anywhere.
It's like a playground, kind of.
Kind of like a playground, but also like a bit of a
Cool
scary
playground.
one.
Yeah.
Scary, right? Like you can see some things on the internet, and
Live leak. Oh, censor
that
that
one.
one. Censor that. Sorry.
so yeah, bro, freedom. I think it was freedom for me. It was the
Interesting.
freedom of the internet. It was infinite possibility,
Yes.
and also instantly gratifying, kind of
Yeah.
delivered to you on demand.
That's interesting. Yeah, I remember I have a lot of dopamine circuits built in my head about loading times as a kid. I get like the quicker something can get delivered to me. That's like, especially when you're a kid.
Yeah.
That's like ultimate freedom, ultimate control. It's like it's the ultimate mother in a symbolic way. That's scary.
And
That's scary.
yes.
When you're a kid,
Yeah.
when you're just a kid, Anyway, getting things on demand is something maybe you shouldn't be getting when you're
Mama cooking your favorite meal and it's
Yeah.
immediately ready.
Yeah, imagine being taught to be okay on a philosophical level, right? That eating Krispy Kreme every night is sweet. Is all good. You'll be a healthy person. That's what the internet. That's what I gather from what you're telling me.
And it was all about making that delivery faster. From dial up to cable, faster computers. It was all about getting that more efficiently to you, quicker to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what's really interesting, actually, on that idea? It makes me think, because the internet is, it's primarily like an information sharing tool, which is also for like pleasure as well. But it makes me think how much of the internet is designed for like kids' pleasure circuits. You know what I mean? Like how much of it is designed just for kids to be glued in front of a screen. And I think when we were kids, it was kind of like YouTube, it was just dumb videos and stuff. But it's become more like optimized since then. And I reckon the thing that really made me be like, dystopia, is I was walking through a shopping center a few years ago and I saw a pram with a baby in it, and it had
An iPad slot.
yes, an iPad slot built in. Like it wasn't like an extension. It was part of the pram, like the mum and the dad or whoever, the person who bought the pram.
Yeah.
The person who bought the pram was doing it intentionally, knowing that they could just sate their kid at any point.
Yeah.
And they were just watching, like it was like Doodle Jump videos or something on autoplay, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then they got off the escalator and I was like, it's weird if I look more,
Yeah.
so I walked away.
Just like, no.
It seemed like enough.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Actually, when you
it'll
put
get
it,
another kind of creepy.
Well, I mean,
when you put it that way, it's like, I think that, it's optimized now. Because I think about these Mario and Sonic videos that fascinate me as a kid. Those are like incidental. Like that was all just other gamers and like aficionados making that because they wanted to see that. But I think now we're in an age where that kind of content, or content that's at least roughly equivalent to that. So sort of like, gaming fan content or anything about any form of media that's popular with children. That kind of stuff has been filtered. They know what sells, sort of video lengths, content, even the audio design of the video, the visuals of the thumbnail. All these things are so much more control, and you have so much control over the variables. People are purposefully producing this kind of content rather than that organically emerging. Like a beautiful thing, or something that once came as a product of like love, is now exploitation of
Being
dopamine.
commodified.
Yeah, essentially it's
Commodified
commodified
dopamine.
exploitation of the dopamine
Yeah.
that it gives, or they know that it can give.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm leaning more towards as well, also like a maybe alternative perspective on that same position, or rather the same mechanism, and that is just like there's no grandmaster in control when it comes to the internet and the content in terms of like, how much pleasure it gives you. I mean, yeah, obviously there is that free market element in it, and like, as a creator, you'd be enticed into figuring out what it means to, grab more clicks and likes and entertain people more. But
Yeah, for sure.
But what's interesting as well is that like you can't also ignore the fact that like we're very much like, if you look at it on a grander level, on a human, on a macro level, it's just like you're your own boss there, and you start to look at the internet and you start to look things up and you start to go about making content or whatever. Your engagement with the internet starts to become a reflection of yourself.
Yep.
And you start to, have little peaks. Like when you go into your main YouTube like front page, you can argue that these are all separate compartmentalized categories of who I am internally. Like you'll see a video if you're into racing like I am, and music production, and also, I don't know, philosophy. Go to my main YouTube page and there's a video on each of those. And I'm like, oh, I'm looking at myself.
Did you know it's also like time sensitive as well? I know like in the evenings when the dumb evening content that I don't have any self-control and I just want to be a zombie content, it changes for me. Because my brain gets dumber as it gets darker. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same.
I have that as well.
Yeah. I notice also at like nighttime as well. The content I get is oriented towards immediate gratification, rather than the kind of long form content, which is probably going to be more, I guess, educational, or at least, I don't know, substantive in its content. And
more information based than like entertainment based.
Yeah.
That changes over. That's and it's interesting. Yeah. I like the idea that it's a reflection of your identity, because it really does. Like you can really get an insight into someone from their like their fucking their search history.
Yeah.
Like, and also I know Facebook, the way that like they can basically nearly determine who you are, or your exact things, your exact kind of like personality archetype by 100 pieces of data.
Really?
Like, yeah, it is like they've got it down to a science in terms of like targeted ads.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And another cool thing they do, cool thing they do is
quotation marks.
Yes, so if Geo's into like Sonic games, right, and Sonic or video game music or whatever, and we are getting tracked and they know we're in the same location, I get recommended Sonic video game music content. Because it says people who you associate with generally like this stuff. You probably will as well. And you can actually see that in like Facebook ad preferences if you go through. Like that's not like deep state stuff. That's like on the actual
terms and conditions.
Yeah, you can like, you literally go on your Facebook profile like right now. You can see why targeted ads have been chosen for you.
Yep.
Like every single one, like a history of them.
Same with Google. You can see what it's tagged you as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Whole list of it.
Interesting. I guess that comes down then to the responsibility of the individual and how honest they're willing to be with their expression of themselves on the internet.
I reckon there's 2 points to acknowledge. So I think the internet is interesting because it's kind of born from each individual's explorations, creations, all of that. It's kind of like a crowd-funded creation in that sense.
Yeah.
But then there's the other component, which is that corporations are looking to efficiently maximize that. So they want to deliver to you what they think you're going to click on. And it's devoid of morality at the same time. It's just about attention. What would grab your attention? What would keep you in? And the morality of it is, I mean, that's just not even in the question.
Yeah, man. I reckon it also, I think what that really provides us, it sort of compartmentalizes a level of ourselves that we're willing to give out on the hand of a corporation. And I think, are we really? I'm like, these are the questions I feel like we should be asking in terms of on a moral level. It's like, should we be okay with this? Should we be okay with trusting reflections of ourselves with big corporations and companies that where their predominant interest is clicks and likes and attention and all that kind of stuff? There's also another thing I feel that we should consider within that, is that I feel as if a symptom could be just stagnation of yourself on the internet. Like, how many times how many times have you been sick of your YouTube feed because you've just been looked at and you're like, dude, this is all like I've seen. Like, it's like it stagnates, and it's a weird feeling. I don't know where I'm really going with that. I guess what I'm just trying to say is it's weird to see how much of you isn't run by you on the internet, and how that gives like a level of inertia, and it's like a weird identity castration that you get from it, like from your experience with the internet. That's why it alienates you, like, I feel, to an extent.
No, I totally get that.
Look, I'm bashing the internet a lot. I just want to say I love the internet, but I'm just, if you were to tell me what are the bad things, this is what I would be saying. So I'm not sitting here saying we should bomb Microsoft because of the internet.
Not saying.
I'm not saying that.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Don't connect that with any early discussions about eco-terrorism, right? Don't connect dots that aren't there. Don't connect the dots.
You're not eco-terrorists.
Don't figure out the puzzle.
Figure out there is no anonymous Bitcoin payment that will be going to a person that. Yeah, what were you saying?
Yeah, man. So like internet algorithms, haha. Yeah, man. Like I think the thing about it's kind of like what you're saying there, that they can allow us, or rather they facilitate stagnation.
Yeah.
They encourage complacency because by design they are exploitative. It's corporations and their vested interest in, monopolizing our attention to profit off of our attention. And fundamentally, any incidental joy that comes from that, or any incidental, benefit of any kind, is incidental. And I'm not saying that to be a pessimist about the great content on the internet, but I think I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it sort of like in the mechanics. I think in the mechanics of how the algorithm works, is that it targets the safe and the known for me, and I have to go out of my way to find unsafe and unknown content.
Yeah.
To find anything that's sort of like different from my usual echo chambers of the things that I kind of explore, the kind of content I typically engage with.
You got to open Tor.
You gotta,
I can't go on like regular web. If I'm not on deep web, I'm not finding anything new.
The deep web.
But what was pre-feed internet like? You know what I mean? That was me being a kid on Newgrounds. Oh, I'm interested in Mario and Sonic. I'm going to look that up.
Yes,
I think I wouldn't get recommended that ever again. It's just like, oh, I get as much Mario and Sonic as I want. It's not I watch that and then I'm subjected to having like, you know what I mean? Like it's like I don't imagine a kid having candy in front of them and then being constantly given candy.
Man,
do you know what's really? Sorry, can I say something? You know what's really interesting is that the cool thing about the internet before algorithms and big social media conglomerates took over is that you had to find stuff yourself. And that meant it was really annoying at times to find things. Like it wasn't centralized. There weren't big sub-communities. But it was an exploration. It was like an active thing.
Yes.
And that is what created growth and finding new things and spontaneity. You're not just NPC, click autoplay on YouTube and you will literally watch till the sun explodes of content. Like you had to go out and find stuff. That's, I think that was one of the benefits of like pre-concentrated capitalist monopoly internet,
I feel as if like to parade that, I almost want to say like, take me back to 2006 golden era internet. Take me back to when YouTube had a gold subscribe button, pre-GFC internet.
And you had to, you got 1 to 5 star rating system.
Yeah, 1 to 5 star. But the problems in the world were much simpler then. Bush was an outright bad guy.
I think you were just younger.
Yeah, you know what? That's a real thing as well. If I was this age then, I feel like I'd still be freaking out to the extent I am now.
With
problems and everything that happens in the world.
But the internet was definitely simpler because it was an emerging technology.
Yeah.
This is what, like 2008? Around when were you born?
I was born 98.
98. Yeah, so like 2008 when you're like 10 years old.
I think it's worth investigating that point. How much of this is us being nostalgic, as a bunch of 20-somethings thinking about the internet we grew up with as kids, and how much of it is actually significant shifts in the culture of the internet and the design principles of mechanics of, sort of feeds being integrated into all kinds of social media these days. Because we didn't grow up with that. And I feel like I looked up things I wanted to see. You know what I mean? And even if it was like stupid stuff I was finding, it was like, oh, I'm into anime, so I'm going to look up anime social boards. I'm going to find Gaia online, which is like a total waste of time. Shout out to Gaia Online. But like, at the same time, like, I found that. I looked it up. I wasn't advertised to because, YouTube had seen that I'd seen anime once, and then this crazy algorithm happened and my phone recorded me saying the word anime and determined that Gaia Online would be suitable for me.
You're ruining Nick's feed because his phone's on the table.
Yeah, my phone's on the table.
Yeah, I really hope everyone in this room and all the listeners to this podcast get Gaia Online ads. I've been paid a lot of money to help bring them back.
And anonymous Bitcoin
payments.
Deep web payments.
I actually have a point on my notes here about the deep web.
Wait, the notes don't exist.
I mean,
that makes me think of this original thought.
I just thought of
say it again.
This site. Yeah, no, so that's a good point, man. I
can't wait to descript this and like have to work through this.
Anyway. You're making a lot of extra stuff for Nick to cut out.
Shut up. Shut up.
Jew. So you could have kept that joke in until you said that,
Yeah.
But I think now the fact that
No,
we've
but
made
we
it
can
different-
cut that out because
Guys,
that's
shut
the
the fuck up, guys. Shut the fuck up. Okay,
Please.
yeah. No,
I need the
that was a really interesting point, Gio. The thing that I wanted to get stuck into talking about is how, like, from a Jungian perspective and from a spiritual perspective, how does the internet? How would you guys say? I guess I'm addressing Nathan and Gio more so on this side. Sorry, Quinton, you're a brainlet. But in a spiritual sense, and like, you know, how does the internet come across to you in the actual existential, like, you know, way about it? Like, that's something I wanted to ask. Like, how does it manifest, I guess, into a god?
Still in this context of algorithms as well.
Oh, well, you can mention that. That's probably a good point.
Sure. Look, I mean, either way.
Also, may I just interrupt, Quinton? You can talk. This is not an explicit.
Yeah, no, I know. Nick, you're a much more of a Jungian than me, right?
Correct.
And one of the Jungian quotes that really stands out to me is this idea that God is the collective unconscious, right? And the first thing when I thought of when I heard that, I don't know the specific philosophical context of what he meant, but it made me think, well, what is the collective unconscious? What does it like represent? And you know, the thing with the internet is everyone's like, when you see someone do something horrible, they're like, that's who they really are. That's what they really think. Yep. They're horrible people. And I don't really buy into that because I think people are more complex. But it does make me think the internet is a reflection of everyone's unconscious desires, which is your algorithm preferences. And it's the things you look up. And it's like your fears and insecurities and also your location, which is being tracked.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Omnipresent, bro.
Omnipresence, right? That
Omnipresent.
we are like literally fused to as human beings.
Yes.
So if the internet is a reflection of what we are thinking and what we're trying to explore, and also the parts of ourselves that we aren't comfortable sharing with other people, that to me is a collective unconscious, which in a way is God, because the internet, it feels like it knows you on a level deeper than you know yourself sometimes. It can speak to you in ways, sometimes it's shit, but sometimes it's ways that are profound and frightening, you know?
Yeah, no, I guess internet as a, I guess rather, the internet as a collective unconscious, and then that playing the role of God. That's a very, very new and really interesting way to look at the internet from a psychological and spiritual or Jungian perspective. What really got me thinking about that was watching this interesting video that was...
Still Life Beta Male by John Raffman. Was that it?
That's the
we
one.
watched it yesterday.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
We watched that, and then I had this moment when we were talking about it, the internet being God, and it got me thinking of like Renaissance art. I think in the Baroque period, it could be then. I don't know. I'm looking at Gio because I think
Afterwards.
But when basically in like around the Renaissance
period. It's like
Renaissance period, when the Renaissance period, when they started depicting like, you know, the Enlightenment and all that kind of stuff, and they started depicting that through art, and they would like draw this crazy, really detailed like drawings of hell, right, alongside with other expressions of heaven as well, right? And I'm like, oh wow, these are two like forms of art expressed onto the global religion at the moment, and that's interesting. People would like get really scared and feel very uncanny when they're confronted with this art being made, with depictions of hell, for instance. And you know, us as modern people, we look at that like, oh, that's history. But then when me and Quinton watched this video, it was so absurd. It was honestly,
it was like the deepest recesses of how the internet can warp your like your actual sense of reality, wasn't it? Yeah, just about like deep internet rabbit holes.
Yeah, it was like deep, very obscure niche rabbit holes. Just like sort of the kind of stuff that you don't want to watch too much because it will change you. It's like being familiar with like all the hatred and disgust in the world. It's something crazy. But anyway, the grander point I'm trying to make is that I was watching that with Quinton, and I had this moment. I'm like, this is the modern representation of those paintings that people used to draw in response to a divine presence. And it's a very surreal feeling. When we watched this video, I remember me and Quinton and Yanni all looked at each other, and we had like this thing in ourselves. It was just like, whoa, I don't know how to really feel for the next 15 minutes.
Out there about a specific point in the video.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, just because like I think this kind of really feeds into the point of what you're saying.
Explain what the actual content.
Look, there's a lot of content in the video, but there's one specific highlight of it, and it's all content along this line of which a person wearing a fursuit. I'm not going to explain that concept. Should I explain the concept? Yeah, fuck it. All right, sorry, cut out the fuck it. Okay, a person's wearing a fursuit, which is essentially like a mascot costume.
Animal persona.
Of an animal persona, yeah. And it's not always, but in certain cases done for, you know, purposes of sexual fetish. And so he's wearing this fursuit while sitting, or he's bathing in, in quicksand. And, I don't know what exactly his proclivity is. I'm not here to kink shame anyone. But, he's doing his thing. He's deeply invested in this pleasurable act for him, this very obscure pleasurable act. And in doing
He's like
so,
filming himself.
Yeah, he's filming himself doing it.
Sitting in
And-
quicksand.
Yeah.
As like a fetish thing.
In the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere, by the way. It was in the
middle
forest.
of the woods.
Like,
Yeah, and at some point he starts drowning for real, and he hits the point of no return, and he eventually is taken by the quicksand, and you see him sort of die on camera. And you think about the idea of perceptions, or sort of like depictions of hell. Who's in hell? The sinners. And what are the sins but indulgences that have been sort of so disproportionately represented in oneself that they lead to your demise.
Yeah.
So in a sense, the modern sinner, a person who has a very strange kind of sexuality that can only exist through proliferation of internet culture and obscurity. Like, you're simply not going to conceptualize wearing an animal costume and sitting in quicksand as a sexual act unless you've been deeply sort of like involved in obscure realms of internet pornography.
Where that's normalized as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, there's this sense of, okay.
There is a level of
That is
normalcy,
crazy. I'd
yeah.
never thought of it.
I gotta
He
think-
actually entered hell.
Well, yeah,
when he
he's actually,
died.
he literally
Yeah.
went to hell by his own choosing. I gotta take a step back to the people who aren't, in the know about this really niche stuff. But like, it's a common kind of phenomenon. A lot of people will sort of like basically escalate the levels of, I guess, novelty needed in their pornography use. So it's like, you start by watching some sort of vanilla stuff, and then, you consume a lot of that pornography, and eventually you're no longer aroused by it, and you eventually get into more and more obscure things, eventually leading to the point where you say things like, oh, I'm wearing an animal costume while sitting in a bath of quicksand.
Yeah.
Like, that's an extreme example, but this is a real thing that happened. And in a sense, what is a better image of the modern day demise caused by one's own lust than that?
Yeah.
Like you said, that is the Renaissance painting of the lust, the person of lust sort of being consumed by their own sin.
I also want to add, just like as a disclaimer,
I'm not judging.
We're not
Right.
we're not like
kind of
some
judging.
sort of evangelist group saying, oh, that's a sin. We're more speaking that from like a philosophical
Yeah, and
perspective.
that's why. That's what I kind of mean.
Not like a religious perspective. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're all pretty far gone from any religious truth being a constant in this day and age. But yes, Quinton.
What was so fascinating about that video for me was like, when that was content, like footage of a man dying, right? I mean, you actually can't tell what gender they are underneath but it would look like a dude fox.
It looked like a dude fox, yeah.
Dude fox, yeah. And when you watch something as horrible as that, like if you see a shock video, like a lot of time you can see the person's face and the moment of like them accepting their own death, and that kind of like emotional connection that comes from seeing another person like suffering, and you want to help them, but you can't do that. But with this guy, he was robbed of even that. Like when his face enters under his persona head enters under the quicksand, like his actual head is already under, like he is suffocating at that point. And that final moment of like, connection is like robbed from him. He doesn't even have that. And I think that's like one of the saddest things. You don't know who he is under that persona. He became his persona, and the persona killed him.
Yeah, exactly. And
even the death he was immortalized in too. Like, as far as we're all concerned, he's just the furry guy in the quicksand.
Well, yeah. I mean, they found, apparently the legend has it. The legend has it that people were just stumbling around in the woods and then found this GoPro pointed at this quicksand pit, and then they watched the footage, and it was that person dying. But yeah, it's interesting how you could sort of see that if you were to assign the internet as like, this divine presence or divine God on a philosophical level, or a way that we just engage
not
with.
Divine, not in like a positive sense. Omnipotent.
Transcendental.
Omniscient.
Yeah. It's that is a martyr to an extent. To like, that is a martyr to the idea of the internet. With what Gio said as like, that's a very internet thing to do. Everything that that person was dressed up as, everything that's an internet culture manifest then killed. It's like, that is a martyr to the idea of the internet in some weird sense. And I don't mean that in like a Christian sense, by the way. I do want to clarify as well. Seeing the internet as God. I meant to say this earlier, but I'll say it now. Seeing the internet God, I feel like as if to understand this metaphor, properly, you have to consider that it has to be a pagan God, not so much as like a one not like a monoistic God. I guess the metaphor falls apart there because it's not the culmination of life, full stop. It's a pagan God in the sense of like it's a niche God. It's an archetype responsible in a particular corner of existence. That is the internet. Like you could just turn off your screen. Like you could just turn off, like if you really wanted to piece it from the net, you could just turn your screen off and then you don't have to deal with everything that we're just talking about. Like you have that option. It is there.
Do you have that option?
That's a good question.
And you increasingly don't have that option
Yes.
as we become more reliant on it. Our money these days, we don't see our money. It goes from our work into our bank accounts. That's it.
Yeah.
But something that was interesting about what we're recognizing here, we landed on pornography there. And I think you can't actually discuss the internet without discussing pornography.
Yeah.
It's like a
Interesting.
bedrock.
It is.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, a lot of early innovation for the net and technology, well, perhaps not technology, the net though, was pornography.
Yeah.
Like video streaming and e-commerce were actually inventions from the porn industry.
No way.
Yeah.
They actually.
Yeah.
Damn, man.
Or at least a very big part of their drive
incentive.
was
Yeah.
because probably the earliest money that you could make on the internet, it was all porn.
Yeah.
And so they needed a way to get credit cards. They needed a way to stream videos.
True.
And so they were innovating very quickly to push that out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
That's
you know what that got me
amazing.
thinking as well? You see that, the pleasure principle of porn, like for instance in this scenario, and how that sort of pushes forward for development. You see the same thing in the gaming industry with graphics cards and processing. Like a lot of the cutting edge, a lot of like the cutting edge technologies that are out there, they're derived from people's desire to play video
Desires.
games more smoothly. Like if you look at Nvidia and you look at like, these top companies, like they're doing like some quantum level stuff when it comes to making the fastest processor, but to be used in a graphics card. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's also industrial processes that are not for gamings, that's not for gaming. And obviously, there's very industrial level like creation. But I'm also talking about the pleasure principle driving innovation in the internet is something interesting. That leads me onto the point of how the internet is this maternal goddess figure. If she was a pagan god, if everything we're saying right now is that, to lead it further, I feel like it gets to the point where it starts to manifest in this maternal, like this maternal deity, this female deity, or in the Jungian sense. Shout out to my friend Uber Boyo. In a Jungian sense, it's the devouring mother.
Right, because mummy internet
'Cause-
always has your desires on her mind. She's
Yeah.
trying to
Cater.
take care of you. Cater,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And when you're given administrative control over the mother's care, you become a spoiled kid. And I don't mean that in like a moral sense, like, oh, you grow up spoiled. I mean that like your dopamine circuits are literally hijacked. Like it's not like a moral thing. It's like your dopamine circuits are hijacked. Like, and then that is the nook, the nest, the web of being stuck in the devouring mother.
It can get like that.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
it can get like that. It can get like that.
That's definitely that whole mechanic. It's you can imagine some sort of corrupt maternal figure. I guess, since we are saying that in a Jungian sense, let's think of like the story of Hansel and Gretel, in which the witch lures these children into her candy house by, enticing them with candy for the purpose of fattening up so that she may eat them. And that's kind of the thing that we're talking about here, in which there's this veneer of you're being given content that you want, content that is good for you, content that you find enjoyable and pleasurable, but it's fundamentally not fulfilling. And even if you don't have as dramatic as a downfall as being eaten by a witch or even drowning in a tar pit dressed up in a fetish costume, even if your downfall is more benign, you're kind of going to be like, you're still going to, I guess, find yourself consumed by your own pleasures turned against you. And I think that kind of links back to what we were saying earlier about the dangers of the algorithm. This is kind of to try and synthesize these points. I think in a roundabout way to answer your question about the internet being God, it's like the internet can be
A god.
Your personal a god. Well, it can be a god, and it can be
The god.
The idea of the capital G God, whether you mean that in a I don't know, a Christian sense or not, or just any sort of idea of a monotheistic God. But the internet is potentially everything. You can theoretically just you can you can leave whatever religion you believe in now and convert to a whole new one tomorrow. You can delete all your internet accounts and you can make new accounts and get get whole new algorithms tailored and look up whole new interests. But you won't. In the same way, people don't convert religions out of nowhere. Things build up to that. They don't convert internet preferences out of nowhere. So in a sense, while internet has the potential to sort of be, to be the idea of like a pagan god of our own creation, of like a certain tendency built up and turned into an idol, it also can be the liberator from that very thing. So the internet's not evil, but there are a lot of evil mechanics that are utilizing the internet.
Right. So don't get lazy, don't get stagnant, because if you do, the internet will support you through it.
Yeah,
It won't resist that. Like it's designed to assist with wherever you're at.
That's kind of what I was trying to get at earlier with like if you look at the curators of the internet as organizations that put out content, it's just like I guess what I was trying to say is that like that's the other half that is curating your stagnation. Like, are you comfortable with delegating your authority, your own responsibility and authority on them to provide you ever fulfilling information to the point where you sacrifice your autonomy and they help you stay in a state of inertia in consumption and growing and whatever, as long as it just comes to the internet. But yeah, it's and then I guess imagine if you're an 8-year-old kid and you have executive control over your mum's authority of you. You could tell her, like, you can program in, if you had executive control or whatever, right? Ooh. You could be like, I want cookies every night.
I want chicken nuggets.
I want chicken nuggets every night. And then you press that button and then, you override your mum's authoritative word, for instance. And like, then you get what you want. That's what the internet does. That's that cycle, that inertia cycle that the internet can develop into. It's juicy.
That's fucking juicy. That's freaking cooked. Juicy.
So here's where I'm conflicted on that point, because that is what I love most about internet, and that is the biggest danger of the internet, is that I am now the pirate, like, at the helm of the ship.
Yes. Yeah.
And like these waters, there's no borders, man. There's no borders. There's no hard borders, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're in charge of your journey there. And so it almost it pushes you into an adult role quicker.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Interesting.
Because you have more authority than you would have otherwise without it.
Yeah.
Just living under the rule of your parents. Or
it certainly can, but it cannot as well. Like, it could make you an adult sooner, or it could keep you as a child far longer.
Right. That's an interesting point.
You know what I reckon? I'm like,
and I mean that in a purely 50-50 way. Like, that's person to person. It's just that powerful of a tool, and it really can go.
Perhaps the responsibility hits you sooner.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
You've given more power, right? That's the best thing. It's greatly empowering to the individual.
Yeah.
You can now do what you want, learn what you want. You can be what you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It can
you
all
be
serve
yourself.
to you.
That's what means being an adult, I feel, in the greatest sense of existence, is like when you can afford to be yourself in the world, right? And I feel like when you're given that role as a kid, like you said, like, it's great responsibility. It's an adult and a responsible person's role to decide for you what you need to have to continue being yourself and to develop and whatever. But you're given that at such an age where you cannot process that. You have almost tyrannical control over an empire which you inherited as a kid. When you're on the internet as a kid and you're screwing yourself over with dopamine patterns, what you're doing is you're like 16-year-old Romanus inheriting the last days of the Roman Empire. You're like, what do I do? You're like, I have so many things to control. I'm 16. I don't know what's going on. Like, you're feeding yourself as a kid all this information and stuff and all these niche things that you're into just endlessly. And no one can mediate that because you're alone on the internet. You're an individual. You have autonomy and you have responsibility. You have freedom.
Yeah. Dude, if you get really meta about this, you can think about it. It's like, because if you think of the narrative, let's go with the idea of the capitulating mother, which is kind of the narrative we've sort of spun so far, in which it's like, okay, the kid has the ability to, leverage their mother's authority. Be like, oh, I want cookies every meal, as many cookies as I want. And we can imagine the internet like that. But at the same time, we can also change that analogy and be like, it's almost like the internet can also be the parent that catches like a kid smoking and then makes you smoke the whole carton of cigarettes to like make you hate cigarettes forever.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that does happen.
You may need to fall into like a dopamine trap for a while.
Yeah.
Just so you can like understand what the problem is.
Yeah.
Because fundamentally, if you don't experience, okay, say you're a kid, you're like, dude, I want my Mario versus Sonic videos, and I'll watch them until my eyes fall out.
Yeah.
So all right, cool, do that, and eventually you're gonna stop enjoying them. So
Also, you'll fall into like pitfalls of reality as well. It's just like that's what happened to me when I played World of Warcraft for 7 years. It's just like you fall into a hole, and then the world around you also starts sort of, well, for me, started rupturing because I'm just like, I'm only ever playing WoW all the time. I'm not doing anything else. My grades went down, everything went down. And I'm like, oh, this has consequences. I should stop. And then because of that, I understood the whole idea of getting sucked into like, you know, just listening only to your pleasure principle. It's just like, you know, that was like a grown-up move, you know. I was like, I had to get rid of WoW. And everyone I see who plays WoW around me, I'm like, bro, get off the heroin. Like, you know, get off that digital heroin. Like, it's super good.
I think there's an interesting question in this, which is how much freedom should you, or how much access should you allow children to have to the internet?
Oh, man.
Which is a big problem because you've got responses all across the board. You've got really carefree, liberal types of parents who will just allow their kids to explore the internet.
Yeah.
Then you've got people trying to monitor them using, you know, various child protection software or features. And then you have people who are really militant and, you know, like consider technology the devil and seek to almost save their children and keep them away from the internet, from that technology. And I don't think we know what we should be doing about it.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, to answer that, I don't even want to, like, I mean, I can start to conceptualize it, but there's no definitive answer that I would come to and be like, this is the correct step. I'd feel like the internet has only been around for 20 years. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like a flu vaccine, the internet. Like, that's how we should treat it. It's like, it's come around and we still don't know like the long-term effects. No one yet has been born with the internet and died from old age.
Do you know what? That's what
interesting.
really shits me about. That's what really annoys me about like parents who are technologically inept and give their kids free reign. It's like, as someone who grew up with the internet, I consider the internet like a real mixed bag. In some ways amazing, and in some ways like pretty terrible.
Yeah.
But not knowing like now and just being ignorant and just giving your kids free reign, I'm almost certain that's not the right thing. You can't just give them free. It's that same idea that like if you give kids access to like junk food in school, you're like, oh, it teaches them self-control. But what you have is vulnerable like child minds who just want yummy tasty things, and that gets baked into their behavior cycles. And schools that do that, like this is like stuff in the US, have higher rates of child obesity, right? Because kids just aren't like, their brains aren't developed enough to make sensible long-term choices, you know. And like, I think the internet's just, I don't know what the answer is, but it's definitely not just being ignorant and carefree, because it's like a powerful beast to be reckoned with.
I feel like our generation has copped the brunt of that. Like,
we have a good dude. Kids today, man, they've grown up in algorithms.
Really?
When I talk to my students, they can't tell me the names of songs that they like. They can't tell me the name of musicians because everything they get is algorithmically generated.
Wow.
They just put on playlists and YouTube autoplay. And, you know, I'm not being like a boomer, but like, it's cool to know what you like and to cultivate your own taste, because it's like a conscious choice. You know, and to just not know because it's easier to just let go of knowledge. Man, like, that's not good. That's not good. You are giving up your ability to choose.
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely.
And you're like 6.
It's also the thing from the perspective of just like a very hardcore conservative approach to limiting the internet. It's also like, how much does that safety turn into bars? You know, how much does that safety, like, oh, I'm keeping them safe, it's secure, and then it's just like, well, how much are you also putting them in a bubble? And like, because another thing I'm super grateful for my internet surfing I've done and the weird stuff I have seen. On the internet. I'm like, that showed me like the reality of the world.
No, I'm not going to finish that sentence. Go on, please.
It's weird. I really attribute to like a lot of me seeing, you know, quote unquote reality, like brutal reality. Like I first came across like, I first saw someone die on the internet. I was like 10. I came across like this picture. It was like a scan. Like the picture looked different. You click on it, and it had like a very gorish video. I was like 10 or something, and I'm like, oh my god, this soul has ceased to exist. Like this is someone dying, and like that's something a 10-year-old. I don't know. That just it sort of creeps you out, right? But it's just like I look at that. And I'm like, I'm glad I saw that because it's like it gave me very real angle on what happens in the laws of nature immediately. It wasn't like such an existential, like crushing thing. Maybe because I wasn't personally afflicted by it. I just saw it.
Also, because you don't have like the tools to understand it.
That too as well. Yeah.
But it is, you know what it is? It's like unflinchingly honest.
Yeah, unflinchingly honest. And I like that element of the internet. I like it how sometimes it can do that in a good way, to the point where it's just like, the difference between a city slicker and a country person. The country person is like, I've seen things die, I've seen things grow, and like city main is just sitting out there, it's like, yeah man, desk 9 to 5 coffee, but it's just like the difference that like a level
that a steak is a cow type of thing.
yeah, they don't know steak's a cow. But the thing I'm trying to say is that like being in touch with like the rawness of reality sort of gives you an edge if you can comprehend it and understand it, because that's if you can't, then that's called trauma.
Yeah,
on a psychological level.
It's very interesting.
You can get traumatized in the internet. You definitely can. There are bad things out there. I would say I'm lucky I saw like a gorish video as opposed to some other things I could name that would really not be good for a 10-year-old.
Just 1 second. Hold on. Okay.
It's interesting because like I've had a similar experience where I've been a bit, I was a bit old. Like I was 14 when I sort of saw the darkness of the internet, and I'm not gonna give shout outs to the websites that I saw them on, but I was 14 and I was aware of certain sites that had some sort of crazy stuff, and I was like, man, I want to see some crazy stuff, man. I want to see what's happening in the world. I want to see this stuff. I made a choice. I legally could not have gone those sites that I went on at the age that I did to see the things that I saw. But I don't feel as if I was traumatized by them. I feel like I had this draw to see this, and I think that's sort of an age-old, archetypal thing, is that people are supposed to see things that they're not supposed to see, and I think it's very tempting to sort of have this hard category of sort of the agency of children and adults, but fundamentally, a child rebelling against the standards put upon them by an adult is an archetypal part of growing up. Nothing sadder than a child that does everything that they're told.
Yeah,
that's cringe, bro.
That's cringe.
It doesn't get any more cringe than that.
The words of Joey Diaz, you gotta have something.
Yeah,
otherwise you're boring.
Kids have been stealing, Playboys from their dads in the 70s,
man,
and kids are going on crazy websites in the 2000s. Whatever, man. It's the same thing to me. It's bloody hell. It's our archetypal journey as millennials and for Gen Zers and whatever. Right. So I think it's a good thing that that's out there. And like you said, yeah, it can appear traumatically. And there's some crazy stuff that happens algorithmically in an exploitational way. Now, the sites I went on were simply things that I looked up out of entirely knowing that there was going to be like sort of, gory videos on them. And I just wanted to see what was going on, because I knew that was a thing. I wanted to check it out. I was 14 and curious about the world, just being open to experience, not necessarily out of any, sort of perverse interest. And I think it's too tempting to worry about negative effects, in a sense. It's kind of like this, I say it somewhat similar to like kids need to sort of scrape their knees. They need to, let them play. And if they want to play in a dangerous way, they want to play fighting, they want to play whatever, like that should be, that's part of it, man. Kids got to take risks, so they're going to become really sad adults.
You see kids, like I skate, right? And like you see kids at skate parks, like dropping in on things I would never imagine myself to drop in on. And you're like, what the hell? And like I was talking to one of the dads one time, because I was like sitting on the sideline having a cigarette, enjoying myself at the park, and then I see the kid, his dad, and I'm like, yeah man, like how is that? And he's just like, man, this is the process of just letting my kid be himself. He wanted to go outside and scrape his feet on his knees and all that kind of stuff. I didn't stop him, because I was the same when I was a kid, is what he said. It's like I was playing with bikes and I was doing stupid things, man, but look at him now, look what he's doing. And like this kid had zero fear. And I'm like, wow, interesting. I wonder how that
role model.
Yeah, I wonder how that psychotechnology. I'm not trying to assert like, this kid can drop in on a bowl. This guy's like, a transcendental human being. What I'm trying to say is that like, I wonder how. I wonder how that
Sounds pretty cool to me. I don't know. I wish that kid was me, man. I don't know.
I wonder how that psychotechnology develops later on in life. Like, I want to know how that kid's understanding of just like reward, pain, and pleasure, like sort of go on into the arc of his life. And his dad was a very wise man. His dad is indeed a professor, actually, a professor friend.
Oh, far right.
And yeah, and he's very smart. I have confidence in him. I think he's going good places. But yeah, I guess I guess when it comes down to the internet, boys.
So on that, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you guys. Like, I think we all kind of witnessed some pretty out there things on the internet during our formative years, but we all seem to value it. And I know I definitely value my experiences with the internet. And it was a weird time as well, because we were growing up, we're 90s kids, right? We were growing up and our parents didn't even properly comprehend what it is that we could be doing on the internet. Like to me, I was like, what is this place where I can find these really like out there and just like generally not acceptable things to be viewing? And our parents had no idea you could see people being killed on the internet.
Yeah.
And that we had access to that at a young age. But I still value that.
Yeah, never had the heart to tell my mum that I watched Beheadings. I was like, hey, mum, guess what I saw?
Yeah, full on, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look at this.
Mum, check this out. You know?
You don't do that nowadays.
This is my third favorite beheading.
Warming you up to the other top two. Gets raunchy, I'm telling you.
It's a real clean cut. A Tory Hanzo. Is that radio friendly?
I don't know.
Child.
Nick, please don't cut this part.
Not child beheadings, but child beheading opinions. Child. How do I say this?
I have to edit this out.
As a child, I had opinions on beheadings.
Nathan, sorry, what were you saying?
Another thought I had about that is that they say that we're overprotected these days. Now, I grew up in these times, so I don't have much of a reference, but I know we are. And it's interesting that it's the internet that provides us this risk element. That's the place where I learnt the most about the nitty-gritty, dirty parts of humans. Of humans.
Interesting, yeah.
And exposed to it at a younger age than anyone would think is natural. The internet exposed us all to some really like nitty-gritty, dirty parts of humanity and just consciousness in general. And I think it's interesting how they say we live in a time where we're being really overprotected by our state, by our parents, institutions, and it's interesting we had this avenue of exploration into the nasty, into the scary, which was the internet.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting because like I'm trying to think from the perspective of like, you know, us being here in the first world, right? I guess that rings very true. Us being overprotected. Like we are more overprotected than ever before, but that's only here in the first world, which is interesting. I guess this isn't trying to like respond. I guess I'm just trying to provide an alternative example, but it's just like imagine the difference between somebody who had to actually face all the things that you saw on the internet, you know? And I know, I guess that's just like an interesting perspective, but it's just like here in the first world, we're exposed to danger and hardcoreness of reality through the internet, especially if you're high socioeconomic status, or even, you know, I guess the internet kind of runs through everyone. You know, there's obviously cases where there's both, you know, but yeah, it's just interesting when you consider like, you know, in other places in the world, people see hardcore real shit like in their face. I'm not even talking about war-torn countries, even here in like Sydney. You know what I mean? A kid can be exposed to some hectic, hardcore reality through traumatic experience immediately. But it's weird how the internet sort of levels the playing ground in traumatic shit you can be exposed to.
You know what's really interesting is I think something that we talked about is like people have kind of like I think there's this French term called l'appel du vide, which is like call of the void, which is like your desire to like jump off a bridge when you're on there, or throw your keys off, like to just to be morbid and self-destructive. And the internet is a kind of way of us almost like safely until, you know, you die in quicksand, of safely engaging with that kind of idea as well. But what is interesting is I think the reason why we do that is that we are comfy all the time. We are like pleasure optimized people, you know, like middle class Westerners. I wonder, like, when you if you went to like Uganda, like would they really care about like gore videos? Like would there be like such a demand for them in the same way there are in the West? Because when violence is like normalized, actually no, I can confidently tell you that wouldn't happen. When violence is normalized, you seek happiness.
Yeah.
You base your reality around maximizing pleasure, right? And that's why with my Ugandan friends, all the music they like is unbelievably cheesy happy, and I'm like, well, you guys aren't edgy at all, and that's because they have to deal with so much shit that we don't have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I was literally having this thought the other night. I was listening to Fela Kuti last night, and if you know the full like story behind Fela Kuti, it's actually a very tragic story. But
who's Fela Kuti?
Fela Kuti is this Nigerian Afrobeat artist. And he was a revolutionary figure. He like led like a quasi revolution in Nigeria just with his music and the people who supported his
Spoke
music
against corrupt politics. And,
Yeah.
encouraged sort of like international sort of like unity among African diaspora as well. He sort of synergized,
like Pan-Africanism.
synergized like Afro-American sort of stuff, like the jazz and funk sort of things happening in America.
Yeah.
And then sort of his more sort of like traditional stuff that was, I guess, more traditional African sort of styles as well, all being made into this. Like that's the name Afrobeat. It's just
Afrobeat,
the beat that's everything African.
But the thing it's interesting because when you listen to this, High Life, the song High Lifetime, but High Life the genre, you hear this stuff and it's very, very relaxing and it's very, very upbeat. It's very, very positive. But then when you listen to the lyrics, it's just like the guy's like talking about how he's been abused by police officers and how like he gets told that his people have no future and are lazy by politicians and all. And it's just, and if you watch the documentary, it's a very sad thing. And I'm like, wow, just coming off what you said, I could vouch for that.
Do you know who's the 2020 version of that? 2021 is Bobby Wine in Uganda. Like right now, Bobby Wine in Uganda, he ran against the dictator of Uganda. I forget like his name. And Bobby Wine is like a dance hall musician, and he makes songs about like warning people about the dangers of coronavirus and coming together for democracy. And he's like a huge democratic figure who many people believe won the election legitimately, and there is footage of that the ballot box is getting stuffed for the dictator. And in the same way, all his music is so absurdly positive.
Yeah.
But with very serious subject matter, like a pandemic ravaging, a country where like the president won't even acknowledge it's real because he doesn't want to make himself look bad.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Crazy. Other crazy thing is that the election happened like 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
And there were like huge protests, and my friend Kosoko got like, I haven't told you this. He got the military came in to his city in this area of Kampala, which is the capital, with tanks. And were just driving over kids. What? He was running out of his house and he saw a kid with his like holding his leg in his arm. It just got ripped off, right? And he was getting tear gassed by the army just for being alive in that area because that area was pro Bobby Wine. That was like 4 months ago. Massive protests, right? Still to this day, like preachers, community leaders are just being like disappeared. They're being kidnapped, taken to unknown locations and never seen again.
Wow.
Because like they have an actual dictator.
That is ridiculous.
It is insane. And no one is talking about this. Yeah. I have videos, like Kosoko was sending me videos of him getting tear gassed, running out of his house, and he's like weeping.
Yep.
Like just sprinting away, filming this dying child. And it's like, oh my God.
You know what? That's actually, it's the fact.
Wait, hold on. This is getting very far away from internet discussion.
No. I wanted to actually tie it back into the internet. It's interesting how you have these connections to Uganda and you have the ability to learn this information and know this like situation through the power of the internet. And I feel like that is I feel like here we should commend the internet on the ability to do that, because you have contact with people in Uganda and you have like, not just news. You're not hearing, because if it was news, you'd just see big protests in XYZ and you'd be like, okay, interesting, whatever. But since you actually know people in Uganda and you have like a direct link to like someone on the ground looking around and seeing what's going on, like describing a kid holding his leg after being flattened by a tank, it's right? Real. That can only exist in the day where the internet connects you and that person together. They're in Uganda and you're talking to them over Messenger.
Do you know what's amazing?
But that's just insane because
it's incredible.
This is where I want to commit. Obviously, it's a very bad situation, but in order for that information to reach here, where people can be aware of that and can actually be in a position to make a difference about it, it's just like the internet builds that bridge where you can get this out here, and it helps.
On that idea of just like the internet just being like a transformational force, right? Like with the level of like poverty in Uganda and also like the terrible education system. The average like Ugandan, I'd say, has a lower technological understanding, especially of the internet, than like we do, right? In the days before the election, the president literally banned all social media in the country, right? And so you have like my friends Samaya and Kosoko, they grew up in Iganga, which is like maybe 100 Ks north of Kampala, I think, in like a small village. They actually made fun of my house for being tiny. They're like, "Where do you grow your vegetables?" like your house sucks. I'm like, honestly, you're right. Yes. Also, you know how like avocados are like bougie food here?
Yeah.
That is like bad baby food.
Really?
Like the avocados are just falling on the ground everywhere because they just grow because of the climate,
Yeah.
And they're like, why would anyone adult eat this? It's like baby food. It's embarrassing. But anyway, when social media got blocked, all these like Ugandans who, like they literally don't know how to use computers. They just know how to use phones. They all got VPNs.
Wow.
And were communicating to me through Facebook and like through like activist networks.
Wow.
With VPNs. A lot of them don't like literally don't know how to spell their name on a computer.
Yeah.
And they're using VPNs.
That is ridiculous.
Yes, it is. It just my mind was like astonished.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
It was beautiful. Like when I was talking to them and I was seriously worried that they were going to die because the president singled out Iganga as an area that he hated.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Every day I'd be talking to them over VPNs, and it was just like, this is just insane that I can do this. I'm shocked.
Was it Wicker?
No, it was on Facebook actually.
Oh, real?
Yeah. No, they weren't going down the end-to-end encryption kind of thing.
Okay, right.
But also because they didn't need to.
Yeah. Fair.
Easy solution.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh man, that's juicy. That's interesting.
And that's going to be in a future episode as well.
Yeah. Hey,
we got a whole lot of crazy Ugandan
stories,
content coming up.
About what you just said, Quentin, something that is actually one of the things I like most about tech and the internet. Like, we seem to be focused on how we can get controlled through it. But it's so interesting that the solutions to these methods of control over tech and through the internet is also through tech and internet. And that was one of my obsessions with the internet in my younger years. It was about, how do I circumvent these things, these barriers? How do I circumvent these barriers that are trying to stop my kind of flow across the internet, whether it was at school or wherever it was, home? Like you spoke about Ugandans getting VPNs, right?
Yeah.
Like there's very little that can be circumvented when it comes to agencies trying to restrict your use of technology. There's very little that you can't circumvent.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. In a way, we've really said the internet is responsible for horrible things, but in a way it is alienating, but it is also enables connection. Like I've met lifelong friends through the internet.
Sorry.
No, go on. I mean, it's just changed my life. It's worth mentioning that.
Also,
seriously, yeah.
There's whole careers out of it. Like Nathan here is a IT, graduate.
Software developer.
Software developer. Your life essentially revolves around the computer and the internet, I guess, part and parcel with that.
Very much
it's provided you a life and a means to support yourself. Like it has given a lot of life.
Since the age of about 10 was the beginning of my fascination with technology, and it afforded me so much exploration. Just
would you say it's like a super duper highbrow Lego? You know what I mean? Like in the process of engineering.
No, it does not feel like that at all.
Oh right, the reason why I say that is because I'm like, is it like it's like a very interesting learning curve to master like software and the idea of being, on the internet.
Lego if you're also Lego and it's also the kid playing at the Lego.
Yeah.
Because I think it goes both ways. Like the internet is this ongoing thing. Like we talk now about how the current internet is different from our you know, the 90s or the 2000s where we grew up in. And it's going to be different again in 10 years and 10 years after that. And, you know, Ugandans who don't know how to use computers are going to learn how to do what they need to do if they need to tell their stories.
Yeah.
And that's the level of kind of like broadcasting stories would otherwise go untold. We haven't even seen since the Vietnam War. We can make good things on the internet. We can, you know, like it all kind of comes as part of the same, I don't know, it's an ongoing, forever unfolding arc. And it's just kind of more and more integrated. I guess it's sort of like further the links of integration between us. And it's, the story doesn't end with the internet. There's no like big evil or, you know, good to it. It's just, it's everything. It's all of humanity all at once. And I guess in my books, that kind of does make it ultimately good because, I don't know, it's who we are. It's a reflection of humanity. Like, cool, let's see what people are all about, whether you want to focus on the positive and negatives.
And you know what? You know? Like, one of the big laments we have of the modern era is like the degradation of our learning institutions.
Yep.
But here we are, and I can confidently say that the most valuable learning I've had, some of the most valuable learning I've had has been from the internet. A lot of it, in fact. It has really afforded me the exploration outside of the career path I chose.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that is a powerful thing. It invigorated that hunger, that lust for adventure and further learning on various topics.
Best library in the damn universe.
Yeah.
Right. And you can find whatever you want to learn about.
Yeah. Definitely. That's the most beautiful thing about the empty canvas on the internet. You know, the point that you said where we have distrust in our education institutions. I mean, when you look at, for instance, let's just say Joe Rogan podcast experience, whatever, he's like the most highest paid man with a mic on the planet at the moment. And a lot of people are getting a lot of, I don't know if, even if it's not legit information, he's getting a lot of views and he's making a lot more money than institutions that are built around wisdom and information are. Like, he just did, what was the numbers? Can we get that up? The numbers that pull it up,
Jamie, pull it up.
What was the numbers that Spotify paid him to be on his network?
120 million.
Is 120 million on one person and his content on a thing to provide information. That is like the money like a university would be dealing with to set up shop. And this is just one guy and his internet crew. You know, the fact that the internet can provide can almost neutralize a playing field in terms of like monopoly and power in whatever field, whether it be like, you know, the academic field or just the entertainment field or whatever. The fact that the internet is like the staging area that neutralizes the playing field in who can say what, it's ridiculous. A big transfer of power. Big transfer of power. This is like a historic thing. Like,
right.
The internet is legitimately like a power balance. Like, it's going to be written down in history. I mean, it is already, but I mean, it's huge. Sure. It's huge. So as much as people want to say, oh, it's just the internet, like whatever, just computers and shit. Like, stop and think. Like, the internet is everywhere. You have to start treating it like an organ. You wouldn't drink every day to break your liver, would you? You know, the internet's a part of you. So just be mindful of like how you treat yourself with the internet. It's like your own relationship to your own individual organs, you know? You treat your body well, treat your internet well. Know that it has a lot of meaning and significance. I think that's the takeaway point, I guess.
I think like when you have a healthy relationship with the internet and tech in general, one of the greatest superpowers of it is very quick at responding to it's very quick at responding to needs and to changing opinion and desires.
Yeah.
And so something the internet does well is like, if there is a niche, if you find yourself interested in something, there is nothing stopping you or anyone else creating a space for that.
Yes.
And
that's liberating.
And then if you can get clicks in, then it will grow itself from there. It will grow at a rapid pace, especially if you're filling a hole that is needed to be filled. It will fill quickly.
Definitely. Either way, I think that concludes our kind of little pilot episode here. thank you for listening, everyone. I guess
It's been a pleasure.
it's been no worries.
Good times, lads.
Glad to have you on here.